From Boca Raton, Florida, this is Behind the Bima. In this episode, Rabbi Goldberg and co-hosts Rabbi Josh Brody and Rabbi Philip Moskowitz are joined by Simmy and Sara Zimbalist, parents of Eli Moshe, who was killed in Gaza a few weeks ago. The Zimbalists discuss Eli Moshe's tremendous love for his fellow Jews and Hashem, share stories of his dedication and sense of duty, and explain what lessons we can learn from his short yet impactful life. Plus, can we share space with people we disagree with? All this and more, Behind the Bima.
Welcome back to Behind the Bima. Rabbi Efrem Goldberg, joined by my dear friends and colleagues, Rabbi Philip Moskowitz and Rabbi Josh Brody. And we are back with a very powerful conversation, a very tragic and sad episode, continuing to focus, of course, on Israel and Simmy and Sara Zimbalist, whose son, Eli Moshe, was tragically killed fighting, defending the Jewish people, and a very powerful conversation we had with them. But first, I want to catch up with you, Rabbis. I was in Israel. I recorded that there in the Dabru Studios in Modi'in. My sister happens to have a podcast studio, which is only growing in its popularity, being used. People on the right and the left, really amazing conversations coming out of it. And they're kind enough now, second or third time, lent it to me for a couple of conversations, and it was really amazing. But that's the positive that it's growing. I'll tell you something very sad about it. With my sister's permission, she had a very sad story that she has the equivalent of like a WeWork there. It's called Front Desk, where people rent office space. And then there was a vacancy, and she was talking to somebody who was looking into renting it, seemed very happy about it. And they got a text a day later by the person who looked like they were going to rent it and said, thanks, but no thanks, I'm not going to do it. So she called and said, what's the issue? I'm happy to talk to you about price. What went wrong? What's going on about it? So the person said, the issue is that you have a podcast studio in that space, and some of the guests that the podcasters have on are very right-wing. And they might be offensive to clients I have or people I work with. And I can't afford to lose business if someone's coming to meet with me in my office and they see in that hall they walk past, or in your podcast studio, there's somebody who they disagree with, who's on the right, who they don't want to be in the same space as, so I can't rent for you. I'm so sorry. And my sister was so broken by that story, with everything that's gone on and all the unity we supposedly felt. And we could disagree, and we could have really strongly held opinions, and we can really reject what other people advocate or stand for, but that we can't share space. We can't be in the same space, right? Nobody's saying like work in that same physical office, but you can't have an office in the same shared space because someone might have a guest or someone you disagree with. Is that where we've gotten? I felt bad. My sister was really broken by that story and that reality check of where we are. So I don't know what your experience is, both here in Israel. Is that where you feel we're at, that people don't even want to be able to be in the same space as those that they disagree with?
That's horribly depressing and sad, especially, how many drushes did we give after October 7th where we were
Right.
like, oh, this is the turning point, and finally we realize that there are issues bigger than petty disagreements, and we're all in this together, and when they come to, kill us, they don't differentiate by what kippah you're wearing. And then you have these moments, and it reminds you that sinas chinam, that really baseless hatred, once again rears its ugly head. And we've also been consistent. You could have vehement disagreements, and you could have disagreements in policy, and you can feel very strong in those disagreements. But to not be willing to be in the same room as someone, to walk down the same hall as someone, to me, it's a very sad statement. Again, it's not my position to judge. I don't live in Israel, but certainly speaking about America, it's a very sad statement.
I'll tell you, Rabbi Brody, before you jump in, because she actually wrote this up, her feelings. She wanted to communicate with people she was close with, and with her permission, but she wrote, she said, I told them I believe in free speech and the right of everyone to express their opinion. If someone had a problem with a left-wing podcast operating out of my space, I would never find that acceptable. I believe in tolerance and freedom, and most of all, achdus. He told me he understood what I was saying, but that for him professionally was too risky. He couldn't do it. He could have made up other reasons why not to rent the space, but he wanted to be forthright. Of course, I appreciate that, but I told him I was going to be honest in return. I told him I was okay with him not renting for me. It's business. But what is not okay with, as a Jew, as an Israeli, is the idea that we can't bear the sight of another. That 8 months into this war, that's the state of our nation. I just want to cry. We hung up amicably, but my soul was completely crushed, she writes. And my heart breaks. I remember going back a few presidencies in America. There was somebody who was living in Boca at the time whose mother worked, her company was in an office building that a vice president at the time, going back several presidents, was coming to that space to speak. And her company said anyone who it will be too traumatic to come to work that day is welcome to stay home. You can't be in the building. You can't be in a different floor. You can't come to work because someone, is that where we're at? That, You remember that there were schools when Trump won, like, you got to off from work. It's too traumatic. They go get counseling. Again, in both directions. If President Biden were coming to speak, you couldn't, you give off from work. You can't be in the building. If President Trump is coming, you can't be there. You can't be in the building. That's where we're at, whether it's within the Jewish community or whether it's society at large. Doesn't mean you have to agree. Doesn't mean you have to be best friends. You don't have to vacation together, have dinner together, but you can't be in the same space. And maybe that guy is right financially, like business wise, it could hurt him. If a client says, I ran into someone here, it makes my stomach turn, I can't do business. Maybe he made a business.
It's so interesting you said that, and then I'll let Rabbi Brody jump in. I'm sorry. I was talking to a physician in our community who, after October 7th, he put, where you go to check out and to pay, he put a sign that he's raising money for IDF soldiers in Israel. And when you check out and you pay the copay, you'd like to make a donation, he'll collect all the money and send it to Israel. And one of his patients was very upset by that. And she said, well, you're making a political statement. She goes, I want to get whatever procedure I'm done. I don't want politics thrown in my face. And he asked me, he said, I don't want to lose patients. I don't want to lose clients. On the other hand, this is who I am. This is what I believe in. And he decided, he said, you know what? I have to be true to who I am. He said, and if a patient wants to fire me from being their doctor because I have an innocuous sign that supports, soldiers and communities in Israel, he was willing to do that. But he was so bothered by the fact that a patient dropped him basically and gave him a very bad review solely because he had the audacity of putting a sign there, to support.
Well, let's say we're the opposite. I'll pose it to Rabbi Brody.
Right.
Rabbi Brody, you're going to the doctor, and at the checkout, they're raising money, not for Hamas or the PA or Hezbollah. They're raising money for victims of children, innocent people who've been negatively impacted by the war in Gaza. You'd be like, what? I just came to go to the doctor. Why is this in my face?
Yeah, I might not go to that doctor as much as I love, I love to think that I'm the kind of person that thinks we should be nice to everyone. But right now it is a little tense.
What's one person's obvious cause, right, that it's just and moral and obvious, is another person's not. I'm not saying that doctor did the wrong thing. Right. In principle, maybe that's a price he was willing to pay. I guess these things are complicated, both in the sister case, that doctor. What do you think, Josh? Rabbi Brody?
We don't see a lot of Palestinian paraphernalia, flags and things in our community, but I'm in Teaneck right now, and I walked out of the Dunkin' Donuts, and then hanging out of someone's, trunk, there was like this scarf, and it had the flag, and I didn't see the person. I got afraid. I was a little afraid. I'm like, what's going to happen right now? And I think there is a little knee-jerk reaction. If I saw that in a doctor's office, I might say, you know what? I got to go find another doctor. It's not my thing. It's not my.
You might say, like, why is the doctor wearing that on their sleeve, or why are they putting that in my face? Keep those opinions, raise that money, do that fundraiser on the side. Right. But for us, again, the IDF is the most moral army in the world. They're fighting for freedom and liberty and the principles and values we hold dear in Israel and America. Like, it's an obvious thing to us. Right. To the other person, they might be like, again, but then again, what if you went to the doctor and they were raising money for Ukraine, to defend themselves in this unjust war against Russia? You might be like, I'm going to give, I'm not going to give, but I'm not bothered by it. Maybe they're Ukrainian and they're raising money for Ukraine, the Ukrainian army who's fighting for their lives.
But I think I have to agree with your sister, because there it's not about two different, religious groups. You're talking about Jews. And I think what we've experienced, certainly in Boca, is that the diversity is the strength. It's not just a neutral. It's like, okay, you do it, you're all the same, and we do diversity, and we're in the same place as you. No, we're in a much better place because of it. And I only wish that this guy would have taken the spot. And you know what? Understood that there are different types of Jews out there, and that's okay. Yeah. Don't be so threatened by it. Yeah,
she said, my sister said, it's true. I have some right-wing podcasters who, by the way, have some very left-wing people as guests. I also have people with left-wing views who co-host a podcast with an Arab. Like, it's a diverse place. And you walk through that space. If you peek over into the podcast studio, you never know each day who's going to use it and who the guests will be. But that's okay. That's not your office. No one's forcing you to sit in the cafeteria together. Why can't we? With Yosef and his brothers, the Torah says, Lo yachlu ledabro leshalom. Like, they couldn't even give a shalom aleichem. Like, if we get to that point that you can't, and you see that a little bit. I just came back from Israel, and there's still so much positivity and energy and the general spirit of Achdus, and hopefully the heart of the Jewish people is strong and will persevere. But there are forces at work that are trying to divide, and they're important divisions. The debate about Haredim in the army and is the government, or those who are doing it, are they doing it for the right reasons? Are they anti-religious? And is it complicated for some people? If I even say the word it's complicated, I'll be in trouble. It's complicated, how it's communicated, what the solutions, whose fault, how did we get here, what's obvious should happen. but people hold strong opinions, and it's understandable where they come from. But I hope that we could still be in the same space. I hope you could share a bus or a train. I hope you'd give a ride. I hope, God forbid, if there were on October 7th, you would cry, your heart would break if the person who's different. So that's,
It's one of the things we speak about locally is that, 5 years ago, 6 years ago, 7 years ago, we used to have regular lunches with our colleagues across the religious spectrum here in Boca Raton, the Reform and the Conservative. And those were really great opportunities to develop relationships and to open lines of communication where we might disagree with them on the vast majority of issues, but there was a cordiality, there was a way of communicating, there was a mutual respect. You asked how each other's families were. And, I think after COVID, those kind of petered out a little bit, and no one's fault. And that's just kind of how the world went. But you and I have lamented to each other many times that we miss those conversations and we miss those relationships. And part of the reason is just for the sake of having that relationship. You never know when you're going to need it. You never know when you're going to need those lines of communication. And we do believe there's a value in having those relationships, even with people you might not agree with.
On this trip, I still did a lot of the meaningful things, including going to Tel Hashemer Hospital. And I went to my friends at Nefesh B'Nefesh and connected in ways that I haven't been able to previously. Our missions have been so fast and quick and short and intense. But I also played golf in Caesarea with my brother-in-law, and we were paired with another guy. He was a 75-year-old, secular, by his own description, Israeli, sold his company and did well. And for 16 holes, we just talked about golf and about life and enjoyed each other's game and shot and so on. And then I made the mistake. Like on the 17th hole, I said, how do you think this ends? What do you think happens next in Gaza? What does the day after look like? What do you think? And he strongly, not directed at me, but felt very strongly. He actually served in Sayeret, and he was a roommate of Bibi Netanyahu for 2 years. They fought together, and he is not a fan, let's just say. And as part of a community who have a real venom and vitriol and desperately want him out. But he also had very strong feelings about, we just need to end this, get the hostages home at any cost, even if Hamas is in power. We have to be talking to them. If you ask, well, but there could be another October 7th, or there'll be another war in 2 years. He said, well, yeah, we'll deal with it then, but we desperately need these hostages home. We need quiet. We need our children back home. And whatever, again, the merit of that argument, counter argument, I'm not entitled to an opinion. Obviously, living here in Boca, no skin in the game. My brother-in-law, whose son, my nephew, was fighting in Rafah while we were playing. But my brother-in-law said to me, and then, we had the conversation. It was kind of clear we disagreed. And then we went back talking about golf, for the last hole, and finished up and enjoyed and shook hands, and it was great to meet you and exchange contact. And that's it. And my brother-in-law observed to me afterwards, he said, that's such a lesson in life, right? Because it was against the backdrop of golf that we were enjoying, we were fine. We deviated for that conversation. We realized we have different opinions, and let's go back to what we enjoy. But if your only interaction is on the thing that you so disagree about, now the person is the other. They're the enemy. They're the other. They're the adversary. They're the opposite.
Well, that's the danger of conversations taking place on social media, is because it puts you into a silo. You spend so much time only talking with people that you agree with, and you almost lose that ability to develop the relationship within the context of a difficult conversation.
But we've got to find a way to sort of play golf with the people we disagree with. And you could argue, rent that space, and maybe in that podcast studio, Taka, you will go into the break room. You'll both be reaching for a Coke Zero at the same time, and you'll be saying hi to the person who's on the other side of the issue that you think you can't stand. Don't get into the issue. Just how's your family?
Or instead of golf, come together and learn Torah together.
Yeah.
Right.
I wish there were programs like that.
I was at this wedding last night, and this Yalsha came over, and she said, I had a partner, was it 2-3 weeks ago, and we still talk every week. It's great. It's the greatest feeling ever. Two very different people.
We're going to hear more about that in future episodes when we really get rock and rolling on that. But for now, Simmy and Sara Zimbalist and Eli Moshe, Hashem Yikom Damo, extraordinary young man, like so many who've given their lives. Al Kiddush Hashem, right now next to the Kisei HaKavod, a very small solace or comfort, but really very special people and a very special conversation. Very grateful to Daniela, to my sister, for the use of the Dabru Studios. If you're ever in Modi'in in Israel, you live there, you're visiting, and you want a podcast studio, professional, excellent, amazing. Very grateful for their partnership in producing this episode and others that we will share. Without any further ado, Simmy and Sara Zimbalist. Sara, Simmy, thank you so much for this opportunity. I can't imagine how unbearably painful it is. The whole experience, this loss of your son, Eli Moshe, Hashem Yikom Damo, the opportunity to spend a few minutes and to talk and to share his legacy and his inspiration and his strength is something that I cherish and I know will touch many people. So I thank you for that. And I know it can't be easy. So maybe before we even get to Eli Moshe, tell us about yourselves. We grew up in Teaneck and we're mishpacha, but tell those who are listening and watching your story in terms of how you ended up here and your aliyah, what motivated it, what inspired it. It's not just recently, the last couple of years, but your lives took a major change in trajectory when you chose to come. What led to that?
So my first visit to Israel, I was 11 years old. I was visiting with my family, my brothers who were learning in Keren B'Yavneh. And when I got to the Kotel for the first time, I stopped and I said, I was here before. And I said to my father, Abba, I was here. He said, Sarah, it was your first time on an airplane.
Right.
And then my mother went, oh, she said, I was 3 months pregnant with you at one of our visits when we were here.
Wow.
So I knew from that minute, one day I'm going to live in Israel. I didn't give a timeline, but I knew one day I would live in Israel.
From that young age. So that's something that informed even when you were growing up and you would only date somebody who was going to live in Israel and that was part of your future.
Yes.
With certainty.
The night we got engaged, before we got engaged, I reminded Simmy, right? I said, remember, you have to want to move to Israel one day. And he knew.
The agreement.
He knew and he agreed, yeah.
Wow. And where did your inspiration for Aliyah? Your family always connected to Israel?
Yes, but not nearly as deep as Sarah. It certainly, once I got to know Sarah and her love for Israel, certainly significantly influenced my love for Israel and our desire to move here.
So how long ago? When did you make that Aliyah?
We made Aliyah August 3rd, 2005. We came with 4.5 children. I was expecting our 5th at the time. We came with Nechama. She was 8. Aviva was 6. Shira was 4. Eli Moshe was 2.5. And Avram was born in November 2005, like after we got here.
Right. Wow. And you moved right to?
Beit Shemesh.
Beit Shemesh. Where you are now, and I know you're part of Rabbi Rosner's new and growing community, and now the Beis Medrash, the Beit Midrash at the new shul will be dedicated, something you never imagined, dedicating in memory of a son, Eli Moshe, and we'll talk about that in a moment. But when you came in Aliyah with those young children, you understood the implication that to raise children in Israel meant that they would serve in an army, and in the best of times, that just meant the sacrifice of serving in the army, and probably couldn't imagine or didn't want to imagine one day there being a war.
I think I only thought to myself, he has around 18 years till he joins the army, and Mashiach's going to be here before then. That was really what I was thinking. It wasn't a worry. It wasn't a concern. It was more like, Mashiach's going to be here, so he won't have to be in the army. And that was that. That was the thinking at that point. Like, it didn't bother me.
Right. And fast forward to today, and it's such a difficult question. And of course, you don't have to answer, but you've paid the ultimate price and the greatest sacrifice for the defense of the Jewish people here in our homeland with the tragic loss of your son. Do you look back at that Aliyah? Do you have any regret, remorse? Do you think, what if we hadn't, maybe we shouldn't?
I wouldn't change a thing.
So we've had many conversations with our children over the years. You know, we still have a lot of family in Chutz La'aretz and constantly ask, you know, are you happy here? You know, would you ever want to move back? And not once, not any one of them had a thought or desire to move back to the States. And certainly Eli Moshe, who he went to Yeshivat Ava Yisrael, which is a high school in Beit Shemesh, and then to Yeshivat Hesder in Shalavim. And he, for not a moment, had second thoughts. He wanted to serve in the army as part of his shlichus to Eretz Yisrael, and he wanted to be kravi and a combat soldier, even more so to defend the country. And so certainly his strength and desire, along with his friends, certainly further concretized our views on this.
So following his lead, meaning he didn't have resentment at you for bringing him here or raising him here. So how could you have
the
regrets?
Opposite? He was, you know, he felt it was an important thing to do, you know, and it's part of living in Israel and defending our country, and it was very important to him, and that gave us strength. And he was never worried or concerned or had any second thoughts or doubted that decision.
Who was he named after?
So Eli Moshe is born after 3 girls, and so we decided to name him after 2 of our grandfathers. Simmy's father's father was Eliyahu, and my father's father was Moshe Shlomo. So yes, it's a very long name, Eliyahu Moshe Shlomo. But I called up Rabbi Einemer. He was a rabbi in Silver Spring. I said, can I give him 3 names? He said, my son has 3 names. So I said, okay. And then we had to figure out what to call him. So we wanted to acknowledge both grandfathers' names all the time. And so we decided on Eli Moshe.
That's how it's done. Eli Moshe.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Both ways, right?
It's interesting. His name, he through high school, so his friends either called him Eli Moshe or Eli Mo. When he started yeshiva, he found that, especially in the various Israeli circles, a lot of people thought Moshe was his last name. So he decided to. So from yeshiva through the army, he was going by Eliyahu because he thought it was like easier to explain than all these names.
Only so many times he wanted to repeat.
Exactly.
Wow. So tell us a little bit about him, his childhood, growing up, his character.
I'll tell a cute little story. We went to America to visit my family, and my father picked us up at the airport. And I don't remember how old Eli Moshe was, maybe 6. He turned to my father and said, Zadie, what's that? And he was pointing to a Christmas tree. And my father started laughing, and he said, Baruch Hashem, my grandchildren are growing up in Eretz Israel and have absolutely no clue what that is.
Wow. I know some of the stories I've read and I've seen, and my sister shared that are being shown in the news here in Israel. And it makes it so much harder to understand Hashem's will and his ways, so that the most amazing and the most special people are being taken. Those stories of his love of building and using it to help, and his care and his humility and all of these incredibly special qualities, which is not something that people only talk about afterwards or manufacture because they need something nice to say, but was being said, and certainly you saw it in him, and I'm sure all of your children, but you saw it in him during his lifetime.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much to talk about. I'm trying to think where to start. I'll start off with, I'll call it the importance to him of Torah mitzvos. He took his learning very seriously. One of the big things important to him was Daf Yomi. Even when he was in the army, he had one of those pocket editions of the Gemara that actually my father-in-law bought him, which only in Israel. He bought him one of these soft-backed Gemaras in Osharad, without the Rishonim, but then he could keep it in his vest in the army and learn wherever he was going, because it was very important to him. The other thing that was very important to him was minyan. Even when they were in the Shetach, and he was in Gaza since December, he came out, obviously on multiple occasions, but tried to always get a minyan where possible with the Chayalim in his unit, even when they were tired and need breaks. And they shared with us even on the last Shabbat, that Friday night, he organized the minyan where they were sleeping got the guys to get together and make a minyan for Kabbalat Shabbat. One of the big missions that they were on that was in the news when Israel went. He was part of Handasa Kravit, which is the engineering corps. They largely are blowing up the terror infrastructure in Gaza, destroying tunnels and buildings where terrorists have been. And one of the things one of the big missions they were on was when they went back into the Shifa hospital several months ago. It was around Purim time. And when they went back into the Shifa hospital, it was a very, very successful mission. They captured hundreds of terrorists. So right before he went in, he sends me a bit, Abba, please give Matanot Levionim for me, because I don't think I'm going to be out for Purim. And then I happened to speak to him on Tanit Esther morning, and he says, I said, you don't have to fast today. I want to fast today. It's a boring day. And then I happened to speak during Shiva with one of his friends. He said it was a boring day. We worked like dogs. It was really hot. He pushed himself even though he didn't have to. And then at night on Purim, he said they came back to where they were sleeping around 1 a.m, and there's no electricity or running water or anything like that in Gaza. But on their helmets they have flashlights, so someone brought in a Megillah with them, and they were able to read Megillah, both the day and at night using the flashlights on their helmets. And he showed me a picture of that. So he took these things, even though they are. And you're the rabbi, as you know, that none of these things were necessarily required, but he was very important to him. And so he really made an extra effort to push himself and to push his friends where possible. to keep the Torah and mitzvahs everywhere he was. In addition, certainly much easier when you're in yeshiva, but certainly out of yeshiva as well.
Sure. Wow. Tremendous. I mean, it's not just heroes and soldiers, but also Talmidei Chachamim and examples of mitzvos and midos and incredibly special, courageous heroes. Really, really just unbearable. So have you learned stories from his friends that you didn't know? Are there things that have come out that were comforting or are comforting to you that you've heard in this and during Shiva and in this process?
So I'd say nothing surprised us, meaning the same attributes that he demonstrated at home and in the community, which we had some visibility into, manifested themselves, slightly differently in the army or yeshiva environments, which we had less visibility into them. But the same way that, for example, and as you referenced, he was very big into building. So in our shul, Kilat Nofei Hashemesh and Beit Shemesh, Rabbi Rosner's shul, he built a lot of the shtenders. He built the mechitzas for the shul. He helped build the Bima for the shul, etc. So he was in Yeshivat Shalavim. They told us how he similarly helped fix shtenders and helped fix he built these certain plaques for the Sifrei Torah for when it's Parshat Shavua, Rosh Chodesh, Shosh Regalim, etc. Constantly fixing those. In the base measures, they have these on the actual. I guess for each seat, they've got these stackable bookcases where they can stick their svarim in them. So he built them for people, constantly doing it just from a place of wanting to do good, not because he was looking to get remunerated in any way, just because he wanted people to have satisfaction and be able to put those things to good use. So it was the same kinds of things that's being manifested in a slightly different environment. And similarly, we heard it, from the Chayalim that he was working with, how, constantly, creating an environment that was warm and constantly helping out his fellow Chayalim and willing to take on the most difficult tasks while he was in the army in order to help their unit succeed.
It's always about helping others, putting others first. How a person his age would never ever be asked this question, or should be asked this question, how they would want to be remembered, because they expect or think they have a long life to go. But if he would have been asked how he'd want to be remembered, what his legacy should be, or what difference he would make, what do you think he would have answered?
So, first, I would say that he was very, very, very capable and successful in a lot of areas. But first and foremost, he was extremely, extremely modest. So he liked to do things very quietly.
He'd say he doesn't want to be remembered. He doesn't need to be remembered.
He didn't want any. He'd be so angry at us that we're on the podcast, talking about him, that there are pictures in the news or on television about him, because he likes to do things in a very modest way without getting it. His reward was not getting recognized. He did not want to be recognized for what he did. He liked to do it in a very modest way. That was his personality. But if you would say, what are the things that he certainly was certainly stuck out at? Certainly his Ben Adam L'Chavero was exceptional for someone his age. And I've mentioned this in this, maybe a short story just to illustrate some of the things that I've noticed about him. The term I like to use is the invisible people. There's oftentimes the shomer at the entrance of the building, and there's the kitchen staff all the way in the back, and there's the bus driver, and people can see them every single day, and maybe they say good morning to them, and maybe they don't say anything, but they don't know their names, and they don't know really anything about them. So when his unit came to visit us after the incident occurred on Shabbos, and they continued on their mission, and were only let out on Tuesday, and then had some workshops with the army before they were let out to visit Bima Nachem, the families, and they came on Thursday to Bima Nachem us. And after they had come, and it was very, for us, very, it really, really was Menachem that they were there, and just hearing them and seeing them, and it really was Mechazek us that they came. As they had left, a elderly man came in and said, I want to introduce myself. My name is Nati. I'm the bus driver. I said, nice to meet you. He's like, so his base was located in Zikim, which is slightly south of Ashkelon. And I'm the driver that would drive the Chayalim from the base to the entry points when they go into Gaza. So their vehicles are waiting at Kerem Shalom, for example, when they go into Rafiach. So I would drive them to Kerem Shalom. He's like, and every time I drove them, Eli Moshe would come over and say to me, he knew my name, he talked to me, he knew I knew him, he knew me, and the same thing at Shiva House, the kitchen, someone from the kitchen staff at Shalavim came to be Menachem. He said that the Russian cook was devastated, and the special needs workers in the kitchen were devastated because, again, he constantly, even when he go back to yeshiva while he was in the army for a Shabbos here or there, he constantly gave them respect and truly took interest, not for any self benefit, just because he really, took interest in people. And although, and one of his Rebbeim mentioned this to me, and it really resonated well with me. Although many people were talking a lot about his building capabilities, and he really did he was blessed with golden hands. He really was. And he didn't get it from his father, that's for sure. But he wasn't just good about building things. He was good about building people. And it's something that for someone at age 21, it's really, really, really unique. He had close friends that were also in their 60s and all ages in between, and he had a lot of impact on adults and than most others. And he could have deep conversations with people to guide both youth as well as seniors. There was something in his maturity that made him very, very unique.
Wow. Anything you want to add?
Someone told me during Shiva that as soon as they heard that Eli Moshe was killed, their son ran out to the machzan and brought in a sukkah decoration. And he reminded his mother, he said, Eli Moshe used to get me into the classroom and take me out of the classroom every day when he was like first grade, second grade, to make sure he would make the bus. And he was very upset about his sukkah decoration, this little boy. And he showed it to Eli Moshe on the bus. And Eli Moshe said, wow, this is the most beautiful sukkah decoration I've ever seen. And the boy explained what he wasn't happy with about it. And on the bus together, they fixed whatever needed to be fixed. And they still have that sukkah decoration. And it reminded him of that little story about him. And that's just a little 6-year-old, 7-year-old boy that he knew how to raise him. He still remembered the comment. I don't know how old Eli Moshe was, 5th grade, maybe 6th grade at the time.
From a cook to a bus driver to a 6-year-old, noticing people and lifting them. It's amazing. I don't want to go into something too painful, so of course we don't have to. But I think it wouldn't justify to ask this question just because it's interesting, but I think it's meaningful and important. Just the process of what it was for you to have found out. That knock on the door or being informed throughout this war, was it something that you were afraid of or lived with? Were you like many Israelis who have family members serving, every time you heard the doorbell ring or a knock on the door, worried of what it could mean or what it could be, and this was that worst nightmare being fulfilled, for those who don't live here and even those who do, to be more sensitive and appreciative and understanding of what this is. Is it okay to ask you what that was like?
So I'll start, but prior to the Shabbat week and a half ago, at least for me, I wasn't on my mind because I wasn't living with it on my mind. Part of it came, I think, because of his confidence and his strength. He created strength for us. And I referenced this, I think, in the Hesped at the Levaya, but many times when Sarah may have been concerned, he's like, Ima, don't worry about me, worry about the Chatufim. I'm fine. So we constantly, and every time we spoke to him, he never complained. He never had it, and not because of a macho-ness. I think just he really was felt a sense of confidence in the system, in the process, and how things were being run, that he wasn't creating a sense of worry amongst us. So I think that, certainly as parents, we always are worrying, but I don't think we were overly concerned every time someone knocked at the door,
right.
That it was going to be this terrible event like this. Certainly when on Shabbos morning, we came home from shul. It was actually a bar mitzvah on our shul at Shabbat. There was a kiddush after davening. We came home and we were about to sit down to have lunch, and we had the knock on the door, and there were 3 chayalim that were there, which, by the way, on the one hand, they have the worst job in the world, having to inform families, and certainly, they did it with the utmost kavod and respect throughout the entire process. But it was the hardest day probably of our lives, to have to hear that besorah, terrible besorah ra, and share it with our children and our parents and our family and friends. There's no other way to deal with it. We're obviously heartbroken, and there's no nachama, no words at the time. But I will say that through the process, working, I met the levaya and the hespedim, and the amount of people that were there, and then the thousands of people daily that came to be Menachem Aval, as much as it was also very overwhelming and very tiring. And we're still probably recovering from the exhaustion of Shiva from 7 something in the morning until 11 o'clock at night with short break in the middle of the day. We did feel the love from Am Yisrael, from Klal Yisrael, and it certainly helped be Menachem. It doesn't replace, but it certainly helped be Menachem.
How long was there from when you found out until this was public and you had to deal with the world knowing?
So they came to us around 12 o'clock, Shabbos, afternoon, I guess. The issue was Nechama wasn't home, and we didn't want her to find out from any form of tikshoret or anything after Shabbos or whatever. They wanted to send Chayalim to her house. I said, you are not sending Chayalim to her house. You cannot go to Keren B'Yavneh with 3 Chayalim. Not happening. Too many people have sons and fathers in the army, brothers in the army. So I went to Harav of Gilat, of Nofei Aviv, Beit Knesset Fagenson, like the other shul. And I went to Rav Shenkalevsky and I said, our family needs you at our house. I said, but I'm going to continue on to my Machatanim who live in our community. And I thought the best thing for Nechama would be that Yaakov's father would go and tell her the news. Mm-hmm. But the bigger challenge was all of our families in Chutz La'aretz, and Shabbos wasn't going to be over till after 4 a.m. our time. Right. So we told the army they can't say his name until 6 a.m. our time. And rumors were going around, and people locally knew, but people had put out as a request, please do not share this. The family does not want his name getting out before everyone in Chutz La'aretz knew.
Wow.
And the army was very, again, the formal tikshoret was very makbid not to release the names. The informal ones, yeshivas and community lists, you can't control that information, but at least, the formal, wasn't in the formal news, so we're able to inform our parents and siblings, before it reached the public news.
Right, before they read about it somewhere. Wow. What are the types of things that people have said or done that have given you strength and helped you? Are there things, obviously, without naming people, but that we can learn from that are unhelpful and should be avoided in circumstances like this? But what are the type of things, the outpouring of love of Am Yisrael? First of all, would you tell people that they should only come if they know the family? Or do you think even if they don't know the family, just they're even more so, their presence or their showing up is meaningful? God forbid this should be relevant ever again. But if it is, whether it's in Israel or people coming from Chutz La'aretz, is show up even if you didn't know them meaningful, or give respect and privacy and let the family be with people who knew them? What are some of the lessons? And I know it's all raw and new and you haven't processed and it's obviously something happening in real time, but is there something that we can learn from it?
So just first, thought, and Sarah and I have been talking about, we need to thank all the people that have helped us over the past 10 days. And the truth is we haven't even been able to thank them because there are so many people and so much to thank them for. And because we've really, between food and buying and dropping and driving and helping with the kids and the parents and places for people to stay and being menachem and, minyanim, and the list goes on and on and on. So it was really, and some people traveled in from Chutz La'aretz to be menachem, several family members and friends. It was, so there's really a tremendous outpour, and we almost have to apologize for not being able to respond to all of the phone calls and WhatsApps and emails. It was impossible to stay on top of it. So it was really a tremendous outpour, and there's a lot to be thankful for in that regard.
I personally felt that as soon as his name hit the paper, this wasn't only our personal tragedy. Rather, it was the whole Am Yisrael's tragedy. And so we had so many people come from all over the country who just said, I had to come. And they came to say thank you for the sacrifice that our son made on behalf of them. A few women from Kibbutz Sa'ad came with olive oil. They said, because of your son, we're able to raise our children here by Otef Aza and Kibbutz Sa'ad. Another woman came from near Beersheba. Another woman came, Netanya, Kfar Saba, Petach Tikva. All over, people came. Many said, I'm your neighbor in Ramat Beit Shemesh. They said, how can I not come here and give you a hug? So my heart was overflowing day after day, hour after hour, with the amount of people who came through our door. It was flabbergasted. I just turned to Hashem every few minutes and said, look at your nation. Look how wonderful your people are. What else can we do? Like, they are just so amazing. And this happened in all the Shiva homes. This wasn't just our Shiva home. Everyone had tons of people coming, strangers and friends and family, but the strangers, it blew my mind away. Really, I was so overwhelmed by love from Am Yisrael. There are really no words to really put that feeling out there. It was just really, really, really heartwarming.
And so people shouldn't hesitate. Just show up. Just be present.
Yeah. I mean, and I'll just add then something that's in that I think the news confuses a lot of us. And I say that when we look at, although certainly the largest number of population that came to be Menachem was our friends and our family that are maybe similar to us, but there are many people that came from all walks of life to be Menachem, whether they be religious or not religious, Haredi, Dati Lumi, from Chutzlars, not from Chutzlars, all walks of life that they came in. If you didn't read the newspapers, you would feel that we've got one nation, with a lot of achdus, and I've certainly felt that through both at the Levaya itself and through the Shiva, and again, some of these people knew us and some of these people did not. They just came because they felt they're a part of this country and this
It's so important because there's so many elements that are working so hard to divide us. And there are real things that there are divisions over, and real debates and real issues that people are entitled to feel strongly about. We don't even have to list them. We know what they are, and they seem to be growing right now. But there's these energies and forces and people who are so invested in dividing us, and with those divisions, we have to find those moments of unity, and that's heartwarming to hear that, and reassuring to hear. And you don't have to name names, but are there people who tragically have been through this before, who particularly were helpful, or you're able to lean on, whether it's in this war or other circumstances? Families who've lost sons, who've lost family members to terror or in the army. Is there sort of this community of that nobody wants to be part of, but that experiences something together?
Exactly. We were unfortunately welcomed to a club that nobody wants to be in, but there are multiple families that came during Shiva, some of which we knew before and some which we got a chance to know. And certainly at the time, it wasn't right yet to really get all the advice they could give us, but we certainly have connected with them and connected our children with their children in order to get a lot of advice, which we'll need much of over the upcoming months and years.
I have too much respect for your children's privacy to ask how they're doing, and it's a ridiculous question. 10 days in, is it harder in their generation as hard as it is for you as parents, as those who made Aliyah and made that decision and chose this life? For the children, is it even more complicated, confusing?
We take day by day. That's a motto in our house.
Right.
Day by day.
It's a roller coaster. Everyone's got good days and bad days, and depending on certainly the day when we were informed that he was killed and the day of the funeral, those are harder days. And then Shiva was up on Shabbos, and on Sunday we had Aliyah LaKever. That was also a hard day. Just kind of brings back some of the, the Levaya memories for some of the children, and then now we're trying to get back into some forms of routines, for some, everyone at a different pace, and when the daughter was supposed to go to a sleepaway camp this week, but opted out of it doing that because she wanted to be home with the family, and so we're every child and their needs, we're trying to juggle to make everyone feel comfortable and get back to what the new normal might be going forward.
Sure. I think, we're living in a generation that a lot of people, I don't know necessarily in this country right now during the war, but in non-war times and even now in America, a lot of people will say, my Wi-Fi is slow, there's no God, why do bad things happen to good people? And they overreact over really things that are fixable and repairable and are relatively small in the big scheme of things. I guess it's a sign of somebody's life going so well when those things cause them to challenge God's existence or ask the philosophical questions of theodicy, why bad things happen to good people, and yet you can go through something as tragic as this, and again, it's so raw and so fresh and so new, and obviously your own experiences and emotions will continue to evolve and change over time, and yet it seems your faith in Hashem is not shaken. You see something here that's bigger, and you're even directing your energy into bringing people closer to Him. And we'll talk about in a moment the Beit Midrash, the Beis Medrash at the new shul, and that being a way that you keep Eli Moshe's memory alive. How do you find that strength? How do you find that faith? And again, I don't ask that because you're now responsible to be the poster people of how to live with faith even after this loss that's not fair, and you wouldn't be human if you don't have your moments of anger and grief and crying, but just in the bigger scheme, trying to make sense of this and paying this price, and how to understand or live with the fact that bad things do happen to not good people, great people, in the case of your son and you.
So I have a lot of faith in Hashem, and I fully believe that Eli Moshe finished his tafkid, and this was how Hashem decided he should go at this time, for whatever the reason. And Eli Moshe gives me strength. I think about what he would want, and he would not want us to fall apart. He would not want us to stop with our regular lives. He would just want us to go on. And so, yes, life is going to be very different without him, but we are going to just have a different life going forward. We have so much to be thankful for. We are blessed with beautiful children and wonderful friends and family. One of the imageries that I learned at the beginning of the war was that there's always a rope next to me that goes straight up to Shammai, and I hold on to that rope. And when I'm feeling myself questioning or getting worried, I just hold on to that rope and I say, Hashem, you're in charge. Help me through this, because I can't do it by myself. And the same thing now. That's one of the things I said when we made Aliyah. Hashem's not going to take care of me when I move to Israel. Of course not. He's going to take care of me wherever I am. And so even now, in this very trying time, Hashem's still with me all the time. And this is what he wanted. We were zocheh for a wonderful present for 21 years. And he wanted him back. And I accept that.
Just to echo what Sara said, when he was in Shalavim, so he had a chavrusa that was in Shir Hay when he was in Shir Aleph, and now his chavrusa is an avrecha in the Shalavim Kolo, and he got married. And Eli Moshe, was there, became very, very close with him, helped him get his apartment set up when he was getting married, and they had a lot of quality time together, both in learning and how kind of some deep conversations. And right after the Levaya, he walked me back to the bus that we were taking home, and he told me the following story. He said that about 2 months ago was the last time that he and Eli Moshe had gotten together. And he somehow the conversation came up. Eli Moshe asked him, "What would you do if I got killed in war?" And his Chaver says, I would cry hysterically. And then Moshe says, I don't let you cry at all. And he said to him, he was Israeli, Ma pitom. So he wouldn't accept that answer. So then he said, okay, then cry a little bit, but I want you to stand up straight and be proud and be strong. Mm. And so he shared with me that message, and I think that sounds like Eli Moshe's words, and I think that's the message we took it as a family. That obviously we're going to cry, but on the other hand, we need to be proud. We need to stand up strong and look forward. Mm.
He said, "Tivke ktsat im rosh marom." That's what we're trying to do.
Day by day.
Yes.
Day by day. The end of each day. I know one of the ways that you're perpetuating his memory is the Base Measures Project. Would love to share with people how they can get involved and help make that difference. So you remember our beloved friend, Rabbi Rosner, mentor of mine, incredible person, is building this beautiful community, building a new shul, and the Beit Midrash will be named Eli Moshe. Why is that particularly meaningful, that room, that space?
Eli Moshe put together all the bookcases of Svarim in our current shul. Eli Moshe loved being in the shul. He helped with the shtenders and the mechitzas and the Aron Kodesh, everything we said. It was his home away from home. Davening was so important to him. Learning was important to him. So to commemorate his memory with a beautiful Beit Midrash is just very, very befitting for him.
We've discussed a lot of the decisions, with our 7 children. We wanted to make sure everyone's on board because we'll probably do multiple things in his memory. But when we discussed the opportunity to dedicate the Beit Midrash in his memory, all were in agreement that it was something that would be very matim and it'd be something that he would very much, want. That it would be something that would be very meaningful for him as well because it was so important to him, and he would have loved to have seen it built. And so, at least we can do is dedicate it in his memory.
We'll share that link of how people can participate.
Yes. We actually have this big, as you know, this fundraising campaign right now, which is actually really easy to remember because it's causematch.com/Elimo. So ELIMO. Anyone would like to participate will be certainly much appreciated.
What are the other things? I don't mean causes financially with resources, but what are the things that people can do or take upon themselves or imitate or emulate? What are the things that would be meaningful for you to know that people are doing in his memory?
So at the Levaya, I said, look first, act second. That was Eli Moshe. He would look around. He would scan a room. He would see before other people even see what were needed by all different kinds of people. Like, don't just be self-absorbed. Look around. Help others in whatever way you can. It could be little things. It could be big things. But look around and see how you can help.
Yeah, I would say I agree. Everyone could take on a Maisa Chesed daily and in his memory. I think that would be meaningful. The other thing, and he was quite unique in that regard. I think we were all teenagers at some point. We all had children that are teenagers, and waking up children for a minyan is, it's not always an easy task. There's the taiva of the snooze button that many people push. I don't think I ever had to wake him for minyan. I don't think he ever used the snooze button. He always, and we heard this from his yeshiva as well as from, he was in Sahel, always there early. So I think certainly making an extra effort to get to minyan on time, taking it very seriously. I think that was something that was very important to him. And I think that, although he pushed others, his friends at yeshiva told him that he was the one responsible to go door to door and wake everyone up on Shabbos morning, and not because, and they wanted to come, but some people need the extra push. He was important, and he was always willing to do that in a polite and friendly way.
Yeah, I think you really want to wake up now, like very nice and sweet.
Wow.
And yeah, waking him up was never an issue. He always jumped out of bed and went to shul easily. It was not a challenge at all as parents, but I guess we were very blessed. It was very important to him. He loved his tefillin, loved his tefillin. Was so excited when he got his tefillin for his bar mitzvah. So much so that his brother Avram from then on wanted tefillin, even though he was quite a few years younger. It was just part of him. It was important to him. And it wasn't an option not to go, not to put on it. This was him. This was Eli Moshe. It was part of who he was.
You were blessed to have him, but he didn't come out of nowhere. So there's no question where he got those qualities and that love. Is there anything else that you want to share that you think the world should know about Eli Moshe, that should know about this tragedy, this experience, this war, this country, this people? Is there anything that we didn't cover that you want to share?
My in-laws told me something, that one of the boys came over to them and said, "Are you Zeta?" They asked my father-in-law. My father-in-law said, "Yeah, I'm Zeta." "How do you know that I'm Zeta?" He said, "Eli Moshe would talk about you." How many children talk about their grandparents, about things that inspired them, things that excited them, things that they like to collect similarly to their grandparents? And he had even mentioned to his friend that if anything happened to his grandparents, God forbid, he would be on the next plane. And ironically, my in-laws were on the next plane to come for Shiva when Eli Moshe passed away.
I speak for myself. I speak for our community in Florida. Not presumptuous to say I speak for Klal Yisrael, but in sending you as much love and comfort and strength there is in the world, and in thanking you for raising such a gift for Klal Yisrael and Am Yisrael, and for paying this price for the Jewish people and our safety and security, not only here in Israel, but we know wherever we are that it's only because of people like Eli Moshe and for his peers that are keeping all of us safe. And so his neshama should have an aliyah, and you should have strength and healing in your family. And we send you all of our love. And thank you for your time. I know this wasn't easy, but I really, really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity.